Hey there, and welcome back to the Rheology Podcast. I'm Scott Johnson. Now, for those of you who may be here for the very first time, let me first of all say that Rheology is all about the process of rethinking what you thought you knew, researching the actual truth, and then rediscovering the purposes of God, Jesus, and ultimately what all this has to do with us. Now, on this podcast, I've made it my goal to go through that exact process, but, well, this time I kind of wanted to join forces with some friends of mine who fight this battle pretty much on a daily basis. Tyler and Chris are the leaders of a disciple-making ministry on the campus of the University of North Carolina, Charlotte, UNCC, and they deal with questions and misconceptions about God every single day. So we decided to come together to create a podcast series underneath the umbrella of Rheology, and we're calling it So They Say. So without further ado, here's Tyler.
Hello, my name is Tyler Korn, and I'm one of the leaders of a campus ministry called Impact Charlotte. In our daily lives of ministering to college students on the campus of UNCC, we talk to young students that come from many different backgrounds, family settings, lifestyles, races, and cultures. Through those conversations, one thing has become pretty apparent. There are a lot of views on God, Jesus, and Christianity that just aren't true. People are having thoughts and also saying things about God and about Jesus and about Christianity that aren't entirely correct. There seems to be a lot of confusion when it comes to understanding God and how He works. So today, we're starting a collaborative effort, both from Impact Charlotte and Rheology, to help sort through the confusion that people might have when it comes to understanding God, Jesus, Christianity, and ultimately what this has to do with us. This new series will start the process of dissecting this big overall conversation and trying to sort through all of the thoughts and questions people typically have. We'll begin here with this episode by taking the time to look at the general idea of questioning and bringing to light the views that people are having and the things they are saying. Eventually, we'll try and sort through the confusion to help bring about a more clear idea of the reality of God and what His intentions are for us. So welcome to the conversation. This is So They Say. Again, I'm Tyler Korn, and I'm joined by my co-impact leader, Chris Barron, and our good friend, Scott Johnson, who is the creator of Rheology. Hey, guys.
It's supposed to be good friend.
Well, it's not in the script.
I thought maybe you might improvise.
Mine's supposed to be head leader.
Head leader?
Head leader?
Head of the household.
Headmaster.
Wow. Okay.
Okay,
Well.
so I just want to, I do want to say something before we get started.
Yes.
I don't know what I'm talking about. So I've had a life like as a pastor's kid, right? And I grew up thinking that I knew everything, or at least I was supposed to know everything. But I'm not perfect. I don't know everything, and I'm still trying to figure all this stuff out. Is that a fair disclaimer?
Well, I don't think it was too much of a question for us.
Okay.
But for everybody, anybody that's listening, that's
if
nice.
If you don't know
that's
me, then you might actually assume that I'm perfect. Yeah. And so I've got one story that I want to share to kind of kick us off. I remember it was like science class in the 11th grade in high school. And we were watching a movie and had to fill like this sheet. It was about evolution. But me growing up as a pastor's kid, I was known as the pastor's kid. That was kind of like my main.
Where'd you grow up, by the way?
In the mountains of North Carolina, Hendersonville. Everybody knew that I was a pastor's kid. That was like my main like marker of who is Tyler. Well, his dad is a pastor and does all the Christian stuff. I grew up thinking that I had to know everything to prove that I am seen as good in God's eyes, right? And so I have this weird conversation. We're filling out this worksheet on evolution after this movie in science class, and I'll never forget this. A friend of mine, Tyler Shepard, I'll never forget him. He says, "Hey Tyler, like, aren't you a Christian? Like, what do you think about all this stuff?" And it was the first time in my life where I was like questioned face to face about this is one thing and you're supposed to believe the other. Now prove it to me that what you're saying is right, and I'm gonna be like the one trying to prove that you're wrong. And I was stumbling all over the place. It was like I was learning how to walk again for the first time. I had no idea what to say. And so I started pulling all these like random facts that I'd heard like my parents say, or my pastor say, or I learned in youth group, but I wasn't making any sense. And I knew in the moment, this is a train wreck. what the heck am I doing?
This was in the middle of class, so everyone was like turning their seats and looking at you as you
No, it wasn't. No, I
Okay,
wasn't
okay.
presenting in front of the
Alright.
class.
Standing
It was
up
just
all of
like
a sudden.
three of us, like
Okay.
in the corner. 'Cause I was never sitting up in the front. I was always in the back, in the corner, trying not to talk to anybody. But Tyler, he basically like proved that what you say you believe in is true, right here, right now. Because apparently, like Christianity revolves around this theory that evolution is wrong. And I just could not. I couldn't let go of me trying to know that I knew what I was talking about. I couldn't just say, you know what, Tyler, I don't know, and let that be it. I had in my head, my responsibility as a Christian was to say all these things, and then he was going to be like this amazing convert. So yeah, that was the first time I really felt like, oh, I really don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, you thought you did, but
In my head, without anybody asking me, I knew
Right.
exactly what I believed. But once it happened, like get everything out on the table.
yeah,
Oh, I don't
it was
even
like
know
the
what I just said.
light bulb went off for you, and when you realized that for the first time that
Yeah, the light bulb went off, but it also like turned off at the same time. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, then maybe I don't know anything.
But was that also the beginning of your quest as this like self-proclaimed Christian, or the idea that like Christianity to you now was about knowing everything about Christianity, so you're not in that position again?
No.
Okay.
No. I mean, I grew up thinking that.
Right,
So
right.
this one moment,
Right.
it wasn't like a turning point.
No, but
Right.
the turning point too, like, oh, I realize I'm not a good Christian because I don't know enough. So now to be a good Christian, I need to know everything.
No, it
Okay.
didn't put me on this journey of trying to figure out everything either.
Okay.
That wasn't my personality at the time. It was more like, I don't know, it just stuck with me. Nothing really changed after that conversation, which is, I don't know, I never thought about that. Interesting. Yeah.
So your misconception was that you felt like you had all of you had it figured out. You had it figured out, like the do's and don'ts, and that's the basis of what God wants is for Tyler to figure out all the do's and don'ts.
Yes, but in my head, it's kind of drawn out in two different ways. It's my main responsibility as a Christian is to be able to answer these questions, right?
Right.
And then at the same time, I also had to do all the right things and not do any of the wrong things for God to look at me and be pleased. And so growing up, like I was like the perfect little Christian boy.
Yeah.
I was always at church.
Yeah.
Whether I wanted to or not, because my dad was a pastor, right?
Right.
And I enjoyed that stuff too, but for whatever reason, like the seed of performance and knowledge defining my identity was planted, and it grew. It grew.
All right. All right. I mean, that's kind of. I mean, I wasn't a preacher's kid. I didn't grow up in the church. But once I did, I became like the church kid.
Right.
I was there every time the doors were open and all that kind of stuff. I think before, so for me, I have a pre and a post, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have a pre being a Christian and a post being a Christian. And the pre for me was the mentality of, good people go to the good place and the bad people go to the bad place. And so I've mentioned with you guys before, it's in the book, it's in podcasts and stuff as well. My friend Derek Willoughby, and we're saying these people's names.
Here.
Hey, Derek, if you're listening, hey man.
Shout out Derek.
And hey, Tyler, the other Tyler that helped Tyler one.
Also shout out your book.
And shout out my book if it's listening. So, and Chris, whoever friends you want to shout out to here in a second. I mean, he, we were on a basketball court and he like confronted what I thought I knew, so like this whole thing is so they say. And so in that time, my pre-Christian so they say for me was that good people go one place and bad people go the other place. And well, I'm not a bad guy. I'm a good guy. And even in my heart, I wanted to do good things. I was never the rebel. I never really, like I have two older brothers, and my one brother was like pushed the envelope and, got in trouble.
Okay.
I never did any of that stuff. I tried to drink. I hate, I hated the taste of alcohol.
Same.
So I would like hit one of his beers and like drink it and like, spit it out in the sink. Cause I'm like, well, why do people drink this? I don't get it. So I was still pretty straight and narrow. So I thought, well, that's fine because God's cool with that. And that's all that is. But when my friend Derek said, hey, do you believe in heaven and hell? And I was like, well, of course. And he asked, well, if you died, that whole thing, if you died today, would you go to heaven, hell, whatever? And, maybe he knew that was probably didn't know, but it's ironic that he asked that question because that was what I thought.
Mm-hmm.
So him asking that question really piqued my interest as a 15-year-old. Because that's what I thought that's the way it was supposed to go. And so that started me on, a desire to like go and figure it out, which is basically who I am. That's why Reality came into being, blah, blah, all that jazz. I mean, even if we were sitting here and say like, hey, what's the best TV out there? I'll go and figure it out. I want to go and find out. So I spent time and I started figuring out that my preconception of what this was supposed to be and how he works was wrong. So, and that then led me to start to learn more. And I'll disclaim with you as well that it is a growing thing that we're involved in here. And even though there are going to be several moments, I'm going to guess, in people's lives where they think they do have it figured out, right? Oh, I was so wrong. I had massive misconceptions. I was so wrong. Okay, cool. Now I got it right. And it's like, then 2 years from then, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, what was I thinking?
Yeah.
I mean, because like even up until like a couple of years ago, I still did believe that people went to heaven and hell, and that was the story.
Right.
And that's a whole podcast for another day.
Table that one.
Yes, totally. So yes, I agree. Me too. I feel like I've learned a lot. I'm not gonna make that bold statement and say I'm there, because in probably another year or two, I'll be like, oh my gosh, I have to delete half those podcasts because they're so. I don't think so, but we'll see. Christopher, what about you, man?
So to one up all of you, my parents were so Christian.
Classic Chris.
They moved to a different country. Well, not really. My mom was from the Philippines. My dad met her overseas at the Philippines as missionaries. So I grew up in a different culture. I was a missionary kid my whole life. And my idea of Christianity, right, kind of maybe similar to Tyler and less of you, right? It was just I was born into it.
Yeah.
And to keep it short, I felt that the more I learned about Christianity, because Christianity and like the concepts of it and the Bible and all that stuff is actually pretty complex, right? Even though we try to dumb it down all the time, it's really complex, and it's really hard to have little kids pick up on the complexity of how it works.
Yeah.
I picked up on the black and white stuff, the do good, don't do bad.
Yeah.
And if you do bad things will happen to you. I mean, I remember, I told the story before, but I'm not here. I remember in like third grade or something, I remember I cheated on like a book project thing. I said I read so many pages, I didn't. And then like the next week, we were flying to the States, America from the Philippines. And I won like a prize because I cheated. I felt so guilty. And the whole time flying over here, I was like, oh my gosh, this plane's going to crash. This plane's going to crash because I lied, and God's going to punish me. My whole family's going to die because I lied. Right? That was implanted in my head of what Christianity is. It is about doing the good things. When you don't, like bad things will happen to you. And that went all the way up to like middle school. I remember And up in elementary to middle school, I was like a good kid, right? But I remember being so worn down as a good kid. It was a lot of like performing and trying to, like what you said, Tyler, like having all the right answers. If someone challenges you, you're supposed to be the Christian voice.
Correct.
I went to a missionary school, so I didn't really have that. But I do remember watching these older kids, and they were so much cooler than me. Um, and shout out Unco
Ooh.
and Joel Darwin.
Yes.
They were,
If you're listening,
yeah, definitely not. I just remember seeing them, and they were rebellious. Well, in my eyes, they were rebellious kids. They might not have been rebellious. But I was like, I'd rather do that because that looks cooler and it looks carefree. And being Christian seems so, like, it felt like wearing a suit of armor all the time.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's
Yeah.
just heavy and dragging, and like there are times where I just took it off and I felt more like myself than when I had it on. And so for Christianity, for me, it was just about like growing up, having to know more and do less fun things and like sacrifice everything in order for God to be happy with me. I think a lot of people, I think that's still their conception of Christianity, and that I think it bleeds into who they are and what they believe in, like politics and like cultural, like I don't know, practices they do. Like as a Christian, I can only do this, and I can't
Yeah,
do
you're
that.
walking on eggshells.
Yes, and even in college, like I think that was still a lot of my story of like to be a Christian, you have to have these things in your life sorted out, um, whether or not that's killing you or not, right?
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I think close to college I was introduced to the idea that Christianity is about, save it for later, a relationship and not just about doing the right things. That kind of changed my perspective. And then it wasn't until my older brother asked me what the gospel is. And I was like, oh, the gospel. Of course I know the gospel. That's why I'm a Christian. And I could not explain the gospel to my older brother. And that's when I was on this kick of like, oh, you have to know the gospel and you have to share the gospel. I became very like zealous about evangelizing and gospeling, and became very like reformed in my faith because that painted a very black and white picture of how to believe these things. But then later on in my life, I think in my 20s, it was about, you have to know what you're talking about. If you don't, then you still don't get it. But it wasn't until my 30s I was like, there's so much I actually don't know. There's so much stuff that I thought I knew was true, and I was just trying to oversimplify it, or not like be comfortable with the gray of the concepts of like stuff in the Bible. Um, yeah. So then now I'm in this place where, kind of similar to you, like it's not about getting it right. You know, I think it is. Sure, it is about getting it right. That is actually a good thing to do, but getting it right is not what I thought it was like.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like really it's like getting the proper perspective than it is about getting it right.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to say.
Because it's like if you see God in the proper perspective, then you have a better understanding of what he wants from you, how he does things, which is kind of what we're going to talk about. And so like to me, that's the thing that we should try anyway to try to figure out is like the perspectives of who I am and who God is.
Yes.
We'll never get to know like truly, who God is. I don't really think we'll ever get to really truly know who we are either, because, we change, we do change. But it's probably just about the idea of trying to get to that, because it isn't, unless you're completely fine with this being a religion and you just have a set of rules to follow, then I guess you just go right ahead.
So a lot of people are.
Yes.
Oh, sure there.
Yeah.
The funny thing I was thinking about too is like, and we've written it down in the notes here, but it really does kind of ring true here of situations where, and we've talked about this a lot. I mean, for those of you listening, we're doing this podcast honestly because we've been talking about this, the three of us, for the last couple of years. But we do absolutely live in a culture of people, really starting to question the misconceptions that they actually have. And maybe in their minds, I don't know. I mean, you guys deal with this on a daily basis. Maybe in their minds, they are thinking something's not right. This doesn't feel right, but this is what I was either one led to believe. And both of you guys were church people, church kids. So like, you just went with it. That's what you were told. Probably that's what your parents were told. That's what their parents were told, and so on and so on and so on. So how then do you like break that mold? And you both had situations, and me kind of as well. But I can't imagine there aren't a lot of people right now they have the misconceptions, but they're starting to question exactly, is this true? How can it be true? Because if it's true, it sucks. I don't really like God then at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, right? Is that kind of the temperature you guys take every day?
Yeah, 100%. I think what we are trying to set up are places of discovery and not just places where information is transferred from one person to the next.
Yeah.
So if somebody, I'm trying to think about this. Most students who are part of a Christian organization, they're just really looking to continue what like their parents set up for them. Right? So like, let me just do the thing. And if I do the thing, then everything's going to work out. Then I'll learn what I need to learn. Yeah. And God will be who he says he is. And like, my life is just going to play out in this
pipeline.
My life is going to play out the way it needs to play out. Right? But if I deviate from that, then I need to make sure that I get back on the straight and narrow. For us, that doesn't really create a place of true learning. You're just taking somebody's thoughts, feelings, emotions, information, and just trying to put them inside your brain, but you don't actually understand the concept of what's being talked about.
Right.
And so you just kind of play the game. I think that's been a big part of my story is just I was a great player. Like I knew exactly what it took to be seen as the perfect Christian kid, doing everything I needed to do. I knew how to act like on a Sunday morning at Sunday school and then go to like the youth thing and then go to big church. And then after big church, I knew exactly what I needed to do so that I could be seen as somebody that respected my elders. And then Sunday night doing the same thing, Wednesday night doing the same thing. And so I think we get caught in this cycle of performing for God. And the students that we interact with, that's how they've been introduced to Christianity, is just performing for God and performing for others.
Right.
The difference for us on campus is we're telling people, stop performing and pull the string of all your questions and doubts and concerns. That's something that you say all the time. Pull the string. If you really are doubting God's existence, okay, then explore that. But in typical Christian settings, you're not allowed to explore those things.
Right.
You're not allowed to question those things.
Right.
Because, I mean, then you can't play the game well.
Right.
And that might be a little prickly to hear for some people.
Yeah, but
it is true.
Yeah, it's true. And that is why most people on a college campus are not those people. Because to play the game well is this commitment to the church or organization or the ministry. So most of the people we have conversations with have no desire to keep playing the game, right? So then, but they still believe that there is still a God, but they're like, I don't know if God is important enough in my life to do all that stuff, but I still want to believe in God. But now they're like, but I don't know what part of God to believe in, right? So I think it is a lot of we're just setting up spaces where people can be like, what is true, what isn't true. So and for us, it is less about, it is more about discovering through like what Scripture is saying and like dealing with misconceptions all the time. And it's so hard to man, like I think it's just speaking in this context, right? Context is we're in Charlotte, North Carolina, and it's part of the Bible Belt. So most people grew up Christian here. But it's this weird type of Christianity. It's a cultural Christianity. It's this new word I learned, synchronism, right?
Okay.
So it's like it's a blend of Christianity and just like the culture you grew up in. So it turns into its own religion, right? So now it becomes this like, well, I pray to get stuff, and it's like I have to be good. Like you said earlier, you referenced the straight and narrow. Like people believe there's one path for you, and if I veer off the path, then God is going to find a way to put this path back. But the whole time they're thinking, what is the right path? What is the right path? What is the right path? It's filled with anxiety and fear because like I'm supposed to be on this one path. That is part of the Christian walk, right? So there's just tons and tons of misconceptions what Christianity is, because now they're wandering outside of the Christian spaces, because the Christian spaces they used to be in were like suffocating for them. They didn't want to play the game. They're outside of the Christian spaces, but they are no idea what to attach to.
Because they've only had one experience of what Christianity is. So they don't know there's another way to learn. So like you're saying, if somebody is saying like, I don't know if all this is for me, I'd love to have a space to figure this out, but my only option is going back to church.
Yeah.
I can't.
But they don't want to do that.
They don't want to do that. But then the other option is, well, I guess I'm not a Christian.
Yeah, or I'm a really bad Christian.
Or a bad,
right.
Best case scenario is, I guess I'm just a bad Christian.
Yes. No one is saying I'm a really good Christian outside of church.
Yes.
Right. No one has the confidence to say that.
Okay, so we've kind of danced around two situations here when it comes to Christians raised in the church, playing the game, like you said, Tyler, doing it the right way, playing by the rules, and never questioning anything, even though there are probably thoughts going on thinking, really? Okay, cool. I guess if that's it, okay, I'll just do that.
Yes.
And we do that. But then we have on the other side of the fence, people that may not have been involved in the church, or maybe they did, that just got to the point where the game was not fun. It wasn't, as Chris said, it wasn't worth it. I keep failing at this game, so therefore I'm out. I guess I'm no good. I'm not going to go pro here, so
that's exactly how I feel.
Find another gig, I guess, at that point. So the thing that I have found about the whole idea of questioning is there are really two serious different perspectives in and out of church life, Christian life, as we know it in our culture. And the first one is that it's seen as a sign of weakness, right? As a Christian, it's a sign of weakness too, because then it starts to play in on like your faith in God. How much do you truly believe then? Apparently you don't truly believe because you're questioning. And so that's one thing. And then the other side is like questioning is a sign of intelligence, right? Questioning is a sign of seriousness. Like I'm taking it serious enough that I'm actually going to question. Or from a distant intellectual position, I'm not going to just take someone's word for it. I want the truth. I want to be smart about this, and I want to go and figure it out. So, Chris, you had a story you were talking about.
Well, some of the biggest, like, I'm just from a big overview, like macro perspective. It's the idea of like BIBLE, right? Basic instructions before leaving Earth.
Right.
Christianity in general is
which I used to love that, by the way.
Well, I didn't know that was a thing until like Tyler and other people were like, "Oh yeah,
there's
a basic instructions before leaving Earth."
DC talks on
right.
You know where it actually came from? This is a fun little fact that no one really cares. But there is a rapper by the name of Chris Cooper. He went by Super C. There is a rap group called SFC, Soldiers for Christ. I loved them, still love them. And he coined that phrase.
Wow.
Yeah. He
Shout
coined
out
that
Chris.
phrase. Way to go, Super C.
For misleading.
Or they just call you Soup now. Yeah. He
Sorry,
probably looks back and goes, why did I?
Well, it's funny because that he probably had good intentions or whatever.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of
But then,
course.
like, people connected to this one idea about Christianity being about leaving Earth, right? So
Right.
the whole thing is about not what we're doing here on Earth,
Uh-huh.
but it is about preparing for after Earth.
Yeah.
Right.
And like the perspective of being a Christian is, how can I get to heaven?
Right.
The steps I need to do to get to heaven.
Right.
And that is like one of the biggest misconceptions about Christianity in general. And I think even the Bible Project has maybe put this in the notes. They have one thing about like what's his name? What's the nerdy guy?
Chris Barron. Oh,
yeah. Not the attractive guy.
Yeah.
Tim.
Tim Mackey.
Yeah. He went through this idea of
Tim,
like,
shout out to you, buddy. I know you're
Yeah,
listening.
he's definitely listening. He basically painted the picture of a wrong idea of Christianity, and it's about on Earth trying to do more good than bad, and at the end of the life, you're either go to heaven or hell.
Yeah.
Right. And he's like, that is not the main story of the Bible. And I think his point was like those are like quarter truths to half truths that people have picked up. So basic instructions before leaving Earth is like
Right.
a quarter, I don't know, an eighth truth.
Right.
But people have connected themselves to that. And I think there's so many small like concepts of quarter or eighth truths that people have connected to, and that has like formed majority.
It's been the
of,
main thing.
Yeah, that
of,
becomes whole
Christianity.
truth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it becomes whole truth.
1/8 is equals
Yeah.
1/1.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. And I think, I guess, so in that idea then, which that's just one, right? That's just one small thing. I mean, yes. I mean, me telling the story about my buddy Derek and, teasing that, we'll get into that some other time, but that is, we're all very comfortable with our own little, 1/8 because it does mean whole to us. And we don't question that as far as Christians go. And we just, go on our little merry little way. The students that you guys talk with, I mean, I'm sure you get a blend of both, right? Of both aspects of one that says, I just didn't think I could challenge it. Obviously you've said that. And then the other part is like, it was never really for me because it doesn't really add up.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm an intellectual person. It's not a very intellectual book, and it's a fairy tale and whatever.
Was that a question?
Yeah. I mean, like the people that you talk with, right?
Right.
They correct. They have these both.
Correct. Yeah. You are saying what we do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Every day. Because I mean, for me, I'm looking at this like this isn't just a Christian deal, right? Mm-hmm. This is it's not just a Christian deal. So this whole series that we're doing isn't necessarily from a Christian point of view.
Yeah. Okay.
It's from this is so they say, not so the Christians say, even though a fair amount is from the Christians.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
But the problem is like, if that's the voice of Christianity, the BIBLE, basic instructions before leaving Earth, then that is the gospel that we teach and preach. And so therefore the non-Christians hear that and go, okay, I guess someday, supposedly, according to Christians, we're going to be swept away and the world will be turned to fire and it'll be gone and Jesus will take good people to heaven someday. I guess that's the deal.
And if I want to go to heaven, all I have to do is say a prayer.
Or do the right things.
Yeah.
Be a good person.
But it really does start with like a prayer. Because I mean, we see that on campus too. People come to campus and start sharing the gospel or evangelizing. And we know students that are doing this as well. There's one story. I don't know if I should share this or not, but I'm going to anyway.
Change up a little bit.
What do you mean?
Instead of
I'm not gonna say their
instead
name,
of calling Bob out, naming Larry.
I'm not gonna call them out. There's a group of Christians that were on campus evangelizing. Somebody comes up, a student. These are students having conversations. Student comes up to another student, and they have the conversation that goes good enough so that the non-Christian student says a prayer, and now he's a Christian.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So like, great success. So, but we know this student that was in this conversation. He was already a Christian. We hang out with him every now and then. We ask him a few weeks later after he tells us a story. So where's the guy that came up to you and you shared the gospel and he said the prayer? And he said, I have no idea. Oh, what? Where did he go? What happened? Like, where's his story? Do you have any contact with him? No, he just kind of stopped.
Did his job. He's out of there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, for us at the table, like, that's not success. It's just to get people to say a prayer and then go on their merry way without any kind of relationship, right? I don't even know if we want to get into what success looks like, but another misconception. So they say, all you have to do is say a prayer. Or what does evangelizing look like? Just get people to say a prayer and say they're Christians.
Right.
Right. And then like get them into church. No, that's not it.
Well, the good news is you're not calling anybody out, because the bad news is that's so predominant that
that could be
any group can claim that. So I wrote this down. Like the typically the human equation is referred to as like the one thing that typically screws things up, right? The human equation.
Okay.
User error.
Right. User error. Now, unfortunately, the human equation brings a lot of good as well, but in this context, it's referenced as the thing that screws things up. And the human equation is kind of like a catch-22 in Christianity, because without humans, there really isn't any Christianity. And so since God decided to use humans to partner with him, we have a book full of failure and full of misconceptions and full of the human equation. So it's kind of a weird deal to kind of live with, is that we have to have humans. And so therefore we all are not perfect. And so therefore we tend to screw up the conversation, water down, misconstrue the truth, or what we call the gospel. And then therefore the gospel then becomes all kinds of weird things to a lot of different people. I wrote down in the notes talking about Galatians, like Paul and Barnabas went to the Galatia area in their first missionary journey. And Paul wrote the letter to the Galatians that we have in the New Testament primarily for one main purpose. It was because of a misconception, a misconversation. It was because it was basically boiled down to this idea is like, in order to be a Christian, do you have to first become a Jew? For Jews, Jewish men, for Jews, they had all kinds of little rituals and things they had to do to show that they were like they had signed a contract with God, right? I'm entering into this relationship, and part of entering into this relationship, I have to make a covenant. We have to make a covenant with God, like a contract. Instead of signing my name, we have to do these certain things as Jews, and we have to keep doing these certain things as Jews to stay into this contract. And one of the things that guys had to do, and you guys know this, probably a lot of people that know this, that Jewish guys, in order to stay into this relationship, had to be circumcised. Not going to go into what that is. If you don't know what it is, don't look it up. Never mind. Ask somebody. But basically the reality is that some of these Jewish Christians, some of these bigwigs in Jerusalem started telling all these Gentile people, which were non-Jewish people, that wait, no, you have to be circumcised. Right. You can't follow the Torah and then follow the Messiah if you're not circumcised. How do you do that? How do you do that? The problem is that Peter even fell into it, and James, the actual physical brother of Jesus, fell into it, and a bunch of other people. And so the Gentile Christians were like, what does this mean? I guess we have to be, do we seriously have to do this? And Paul writes this letter, as we know, Galatians, basically for that one purpose, to set everything straight, because there was a serious problem, a serious misconception. And so they say was born, basically. And unfortunately, and Paul had a confrontation with Peter. He writes Galatians basically telling us, hey, here's the truth of what Christianity kind of looks like. And we can get into that some other time. But I guess it's kind of nice to know that, we're talking like 15 years after Jesus has died and been risen, that this stuff happens. And not just with like some Christians out in nowhere, right? That some missionary went to and spread the gospel and they became Christians. No. We're talking about Peter in Jerusalem, and the Jerusalem Jewish Christians like completely got it absolutely wrong. Peter, who was with Jesus for 3 years, got it wrong. So I guess I say that to kind of like say, let's breathe for a second, because, Christians who've been churched and who are still playing the game for a long, long time, is it a misconception? Are they having problems really connecting to the real God? Probably. But as we said in the very beginning, none of us really are there yet. But it's also kind of nice to know that, even Peter got it wrong, and eventually he got it right. Yeah. And the Christians in Jerusalem got it right. But even that doesn't mean that once they got it right, they were right. I mean, the next 150 to 200 years was spent dealing with false teachers. I mean, that was like the major problem in early Christian, history. It wasn't about we're trying to spread the good news over to Egypt and they just won't let us in. No. I mean, it blew up. It went everywhere. The problem they had was trying to, get rid of these false teachings. So they had to deal with it immediately. The human equation entered into this conversation like immediately and started breaking things down. And so, we've been talking, this is a long road. We've been interested in like wanting to go further and into something that we've mentioned, but this series is going to be about trying to touch each one of these little, things that people are saying and what they're thinking and trying to make sense of it.
Thanks for coming along today. Just remember, this is only the beginning of our conversations that we'll continue to have. And we do realize that these episodes might actually stir up more problems than solutions, and you might actually walk away with even more questions than what you had before. But if so, if you'd like to reach out to us, you can get in touch with us through the Rheology website, which is rheologylife.com, and you can submit a question right from the homepage. As for next time, we'll go deeper into the misconceptions about God, Jesus, and Christianity by taking an in-depth look at the concept of a Christian, what it means, who they are, and what they do. We'll see you then.